Okay, our next speaker is Jerry E. Smith, author of HAARP, The Ultimate Weapon of the Conspiracy. I met Jerry some years ago in Reno. He was a very good friend of Jim Keith's. It was Jim Keith who actually suggested some years ago that Adventures Unlimited do these conferences, and that it would be a great treat for all the authors at Adventures Unlimited to be essentially flown out, to some conferences and put up in snazzy hotels or Wex clubs. And Jim was never able to make it to any of these, as he tragically died at a Burning Man in 1999. But we have had Jerry, and this is the second conference we've had Jerry at. So please, a warm welcome for Jerry Smith, author of HAARP, The Ultimate Weapon.
There we go. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining me in this out-of-home experience. That is the cover of my book, beautifully created by the AUP amazing team. My topic is HAARP, the high altitude, This was set up for me by the guy who did my, by the organizer of my last speech, and he got it wrong, and I just fell into the trap he laid for me. It's the High Frequency Auroral Research Program. That speech was called The Technology of Global Control. I have a variation on it on the counter over here. These are my tapes. I have a variation on it called The Technology of Total Control, which was delivered to a mind control group. I'm going to try and get a slightly different take on it here. I want to cover military control, political control, physical control, mental control, and spiritual control. Since this is Sedona, the weird heart of the New Age movement, I thought I ought to get a bit into that. I don't have any cards on that, so when I get near the end, if I haven't mentioned it yet, somebody yell spiritual at me, so because I have no memory whatsoever. This is a very key quote, I think. The prospect of domination of the nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded. Yet, in holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific technological elite. I believe that there is such a scientific technological elite, and that the Project HAARP I'm going to be discussing with you is such a child of that. One of the things that Nick Begich, who wrote the first book on the subject, I wrote the second. There have been about 3 more books out since. One of the things that Nick and I both noticed was this thing called the revolution in military affairs. Whenever you change the way fundamentally that war is fought, it's called an RMA. And I believe we're in the 7th or 8th one in recorded history, when the invention of gunpowder, the realization that gunpowder could be used in warfare created an RMA. The development of bows new was created an RMA, and so forth. We stand now on a new RMA. In fact, right after the fall of the Soviet Union, RMA was the hot topic in military intelligentsia circles. The war colleges and so forth were cranking out a large number of papers on this subject. One of the aspects of this that I find most disturbing, we went from weapons that could target individuals, swords, bows, guns, to weapons that could target groups of individuals, Greek fire, artillery, to weapons that could target whole battlefields, chemical and biological weapons, rather chemical weapons. Then we went to those that could target whole cultures, whole ethnicities, the biological weapons. The atomic weapons are somewhere in between. Now we're at the point where with the electromagnetic weapons we can target the whole planet. We can target whole continents. We can target whole hemispheres. the title you see here, The Revolution in Military Affairs and Conflicts Short of War, which was published by the Strategic Studies Institute, one of the military think tanks, they came up with a very interesting realization. The guys who wrote this paper realized that the kinds of technologies we were developing, the kinds of weapons they were working on, were contrary to American morals and beliefs. And so what was their contention? What did they say? Oh, oh my gosh, this is immoral. We can't do this? No, they said, how do we change America so that America will be willing to accept us playing with these toys? This is the tail wagging the dog. And this is an aspect of this, is that we're being fed a world of disinformation on a continuing basis, because the military planners are redesigning our thinking to let them go forward with playing with these toys. And that I should have gone on to there. There's what I was just saying. This is only the second time I've ever looked at this because it's PowerPoint, and I don't know PowerPoint. I'm still back in slides. Okay, that is the official website, the front page, the official website for HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. I include this just so you know that this is real. Notice the home page here, http://www.harp.alaska.edu. This is from the University of Alaska. When the project was first started, the project, I think I'm going to be getting into this. One of the aspects of this thing was that one of the great controversies of this project is, when did it start? Who started it? Why? There are several different stories about this. The Navy put up a website, the Air Force put up a website, they have since been taken down, and all that's left is this one. That's a slide that kind of gives you an idea of what the electromagnetic spectrum is. We go from the power grid at 60 cycles, actually it goes down, all the way down to 0, but of course there's nothing in the world, nothing in the universe that goes at 0. We're talking vibrations, we're talking frequencies. The electromagnetic spectrum gives us electricity and magnetism work together in some as yet not completely understood form. And we have the power grid, cell phones, microwaves, visible light, gamma rays, X-rays. This is an aerial view of the HAARP site. HAARP is a field of antennas, and those are the antennas. And it's kind of hard to see from this, but these are towers, 72 feet tall, with a crossed dipole antenna at the top of the tower. This building is a power plant. This facility is in southeastern Alaska, and I hope I have a map here. Do I have a map? That's a close-up of the. You can see the crossed dipole antennas, and you can just barely make out that under the antennas there is a grid. You can kind of see it here. There's a grid of a mesh to reflect the energy that comes from the antennas towards the ground and reflect it back up. That's another view. This is the official HAARP cam. The office has a little webcam sticking out the window, and it takes a photo of the site every 20 minutes and posts it to their website, so you can see what it looks like in HAARP during daylight hours. Now this is an artist's rendering of this thing. Again, HAARP is a field of antennas that uses a unique patented ability to focus radio frequency energy from and I need another slide here I don't have, a regular antenna like an AM, FM radio broadcasting antenna tower. The radio energy goes out in a cone, dissipating and getting the cone gets wider and wider, and the energy gets less and less as it goes away from the tower. Well, what HAARP does is it turns the cone upside down. So instead of it going away, it goes together, and it goes together at the atmosphere in what they call a spot. And this spot is about 2.5 miles deep by about 12 miles across by between 50 and 90 miles up. Let me go back to that power station. Up. the power station. This facility was originally supposed to be an over-the-horizon radar facility, but they never got the OTHB system to work properly, so they abandoned it. They built the power station, but they never got around to putting the generators in it. A few years ago, the HAARP guys found one of the generators sitting on in a warehouse in Anchorage, and so half of it is up and running as a generator station. The other half is offices and so forth. This is possibly the beginning of HAARP. This is a patent from by Dr. Bernard Eastland. It was granted in August 11th, 1987. It was filed by, this is the first of 12 filed by a company called APTI. Originally it was Arco Power Technologies Incorporated, but by leaving the Arco in, it kind of it revealed what they were really about, which is some way to make money. So they changed the name to Advanced Power Technologies to kind of hide who the boss is. This is a method and apparatus for altering a region in the Earth's atmosphere, ionosphere, and/or magnetosphere. One of the rather curious things is that Bernard Eastland and his team at APTI had been working on this sort of thing for a decade or two, and about a decade before this patent was granted, he filed for another patent, which I have a link to in my website. This is at the back of my book, at the back of the book, in which he patented an ability to create relativistic particles at the top of the atmosphere, and I'll get into that here in a bit, but it's a way for destroying spy satellites or incoming ICBMs. It's a ground-based Star Wars weapon system. This patent is for a field of antennas like the one we just looked at, only it's designed to be 40 miles on a side. A huge energy hog, so as to make Arco happy selling natural gas to run the turbines to produce the energy. That's what it's really all about. Is Eastland and his people were working on ways to screw the government out of as much money as possible, and they thought playing the Star Wars game was the way to do it. This is the chart of what happened. This is off the website. You notice it hasn't been updated since '98. That's a little behind the scenes. HAARP will be. Let me go back here a bit. Wrong direction. There we go. HAARP, as you see, is a field of antennas. It is a radio broadcast station. When completed, and now scheduled for about 2007, will be the world's largest radio broadcast station. This, each one of these, I hate numbers. Together, this field of antennas will generate, is designed to put, where's that spot? That spot. It's designed to put 3.6 billion watts of radio frequency energy in that spot. To give you an idea how much 3.6 billion watts is, the largest legal AM radio station in the U.S. is 50,000 watts. That is 72,000 50,000 watt radio stations, all injecting their energy into one spot. That will increase the temperature in that spot by about 2,000 degrees, which makes that spot move up and out, which is oddly similar to the earlier, I was mentioning the earlier patent by Bernard Eastland for generating these relativistic particles. That earlier patent was for creating a plasma at the top of the atmosphere. The plasma then goes out higher. It's generated about 250 miles up, goes out to about 1,500 miles up. I'm going to be covering this in the follow-up book on this. I'm currently writing a book following this up, which is the working title is Chemtrails, HAARP, and Weather Warfare: The Military's Plan to Draft Mother Nature. And I'm going to have a section on the Columbia Space Shuttle, because the Columbia Space Shuttle apparently. Okay, the Columbia Space Shuttle apparently was taken out by something like that. The official statement that there was a burn through and which caused a cascade in the electronics is bogus. That's not what happened. The electronics did a sudden a sudden catastrophic failure of the electronics, similar to the effect of an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, which in the early HAARP literature, they talk about how HAARP could be used to create artificial EMPs. And apparently they did it. I don't know whether they did it intentionally or unintentionally, but they apparently did it. Okay. This is about as much science as I really want to get into. That's the sun. That's a coronal ejection, or solar flare. That's the Earth surrounded by magnetic lines of force. And you see that the magnetic lines of force are blown back by the power of the sun. This is called the solar wind. The sun is constantly blowing bits of atoms at us, called the solar wind, which gets trapped in these magnetic lines of force. And this is from Bernard Eastland's patent, which shows you that these particles get into and they bounce back and forth in the lines of force, and they spiral around the lines of force, and they bounce back and forth from the North Pole to the South Pole, and they build up a charge, and the charge is equal to 1,000 power plants running at full capacity, and then it discharges and it comes in at the poles, this is called the electrojet, and the electrojet comes in so hot, so hard, so fast, it heats the atmosphere up, causing it to glow, which is what gives us the northern and southern lights. That's the aurora, and that's what the name of this thing, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, is all about, is they want to screw with the aurora. Here's that map. That's where HAARP is located. Right this corner here, this is really an amazing thing. This is the largest national park in the national park system. It's 14 times larger than Yellowstone, and most Americans have never heard of it. It's called Wrangell St. Elias. Of the 16 highest peaks in North America, 9 of them are in Wrangell St. Elias. In those photos we were looking at, what happened? Stop that. I must have hit the wrong button. Now I'm lost.
You hit right instead of hit right.
Oh, go away. Okay, well, I'm lost. Anybody can anybody unlose me?
As John Kerry said, I hope he's on the way.
I think he meant Hope, Arkansas. Very good. Okay, you unloosed me. Now, why did I do that? Where were we trying to go? Well, let's move forward until the memory comes back. Oh yeah. One of the things I wanted to get into in the book, and I simply ran out of space because I had a limit of 250 pages. I wanted to get into UN biospheres and the Rewilding of America Plan and the Heritage Rivers Act and Agenda 21. And I'm going to talk about that a bit in this talk, though I didn't get a chance to get to it in the book, and we'll be coming up to that. As you can see, well, an often asked question is who's involved in HAARP. Now, this is the old data from what it was when I wrote the book in 1998. Remember that unupdated. They want you to think HAARP is civilian. Remember I mentioned that the original facility here was a over-the-horizon radar facility. If HAARP is used as over-horizon radar, it would have violated the ABM treaty because it's steerable. The ABM treaty specifically says you cannot have a steerable over-the-horizon radar. So they did not want to violate the ABM treaty at that point in time, so they concocted it as being a civilian science station. They put up, Navy and Air Force put up websites. Then the University of Alaska, who took over most of the grunt work, then put up their website. Since that time, a lot of things have changed at HAARP. Down the road over here, we have about 2000, the funding got pulled. And for about 2 years, the scientists just sat around staring at the walls. I read emails of them grousing about not having enough fuel to run the generators. Back here, wrong direction again. Exciting. Okay, these little buildings. Those are shelters, and in the shelters were transmitters. Before they found the missing generator, they were using diesel generators in these transmitter shelters. And so there's, I think, 4 transmitters and diesel gasoline diesel electrical generators in these shelters, and that's what they were running the field with. And they ran out of fuel. They got defunded and run out of fuel. Let me show you something else back here. This is a tiny fraction of what it's supposed to be when completed. This is about 48 towers. I believe there's 70 towers, 48 of which are wired up. When they get up to it, this pad is diagnostic instruments. These instruments see what this does to the ionosphere. This is called the IRI, or Ionospheric Research Instrument. When they finish it in 2007, this pad will be cut much larger. It'll be about there, and will be 180 towers. Where here we have about half of the grid is up. It'll about double in size. Now, I was telling you about the changes, and this is going to be in the book, so I'm giving you a bit of the update here. They got defunded. The Bush administration came in with this idiotic shoot a bullet with a bullet missile defense system that can't work, but they went forward with it. A curious thing is that just down the road from HAARP, 26 miles away from HAARP, is Fort Greely. Fort Greely is the only anti-missile defense base in the country. And that's Tom Ridge had his own missile site, and they've taken possession of at least 4 missiles there. Now, there's a guy named Marshall Smith who has a website called Brother Jonathan Gazette, or BROJON.com. And he listens. He's a former NASA. Okay, he's got an amazing story. He was a NASA project head, and he got hired. NASA tasked him to figure out a way to give our missile secrets to the Red Chinese. So he worked up a gizmo that could be given to the Red Chinese so that it would look like that we were giving them civilian technology when we were actually giving them military technology. And after he did it, he went, "Why did I do that?" And is now a whistleblower blowing the whistle on what's wrong with NASA and a lot of other things. He's big on peak oil. So the HAARP begins, and there's a great deal of debate as to how HAARP began, because we saw the Bernard Eastland patents. HAARP says, no, that's not us. We're not doing that. No, there's no connection between us and Eastland. However, though the company that Eastland worked for got the contract to build HAARP because they had the technology, they had the patents, they had the intellectual property to build HAARP. And whoever has possessed the patent since has had the contract, because you can't do it without this technology, because it's the only one in the world. Now, the APTI got bought by E-Systems. E-Systems got bought by Raytheon. Recently, Raytheon sold E-Systems to BAE Systems, and I need to put the slides of this up. BAE Systems is the former British Aerospace. The British Aerospace North America has several divisions, and one of which is the Electronic and Information Warfare Division, and those are the people who currently have the contract to finish building HAARP. I think that should be of interest. The Electronic and Information Warfare Systems. The current management, it was originally a group effort of Navy and Air Force, and Nick Begich and I both wrote at great length about the Navy and Air Force connection to this thing. Since then, DARPA has taken it over. DARPA is the Defense Advanced Projects Research Agency. If you've ever seen the James Bond movies, remember Q? Imagine, if you will, Q has 10,000 employees and $1 billion budget. That's DARPA. So, somewhere around here, DARPA takes over. It goes from Air Force and Navy through this period to DARPA. DARPA has 8 directorates, one of which is TTO, the Tactical Technical Office, whose job it is to make force multipliers. A force multiplier. This is a phrase that keeps coming up in HAARP research. There was a, and I'm going to get to that here in a bit. Let me move on, because I think you're having trouble staying awake. Okay. Now, people keep asking me, what is HAARP? This says it. This is in military bureaucratic ease. You know, you got to kind of decipher this thing. But this exactly states what they intend to do with HAARP. The heart of the program will be the development of a unique ionospheric heating capability to conduct the pioneering experiments required to adequately assess the potential for exploiting ionospheric enhancement technology for DoD purposes. Now let me break that down. Ionospheric enhancement. You got to love that. Only the military would think breaking something makes it better. Again, the whole bit about is they're injecting energy into the ionosphere to make it do things. They are changing the ionosphere. They're changing the electrojet. They are meddling with big Earth systems. And they're enhancing the Earth. They're making the Earth better for us. Now, come back here, you. This thing goes to sleep all the time. Okay.
You know what corner the mouse goes in to prevent that? I've been trying each of the corners. There's one corner that you can put it in.
Yeah. Okay. 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 So we have the heart of the program will be the development of unique ionospheric heating capability. Unique. Bernard Eastland's patent. Ionospheric heating. You inject this energy into the into the ionosphere. It heats it by about 2,000 degrees. Capability. This is, can they make it work? Can they actually get a field of antennas that will do this? Pioneering experiments. This is this working it out, working with this field of antennas, injecting the energy in and seeing what the hell happens. DoD purposes. What are DoD purposes? The DoD is there to win wars. So what this says is the purpose of HAARP is to find out if we can weaponize the atmosphere.
Exactly.
Now my question is that a good thing? Right, exactly. That was the point I was getting to with who's running it right now. Who's running it right now is TTO, Technical Office, whose job it is to make force multipliers. A force multiplier. Let's say you have some troops and you want to move them and you don't want the enemy to see that you're moving them. If you could like create a cloud layer. That cloud layer, and you guys march under the cloud layer and they don't see you, well, that cloud layer becomes a force multiplier because it multiplies the attack ability of this force to sneak up and do its thing. So one of the things that both Nick and I noticed was an Air Force paper called Owning the Weather in 2025, Weather as a Force Multiplier. That's one of the things, is HAARP is a force multiplier. Yeah, that's the ones I've been pushing. Okay, now I've just talked a bit about what is ionospheric enhancement. Again, you inject energy in and you change it, which allows you to do a number of things. One of the things that they were planning on doing here is tuning the aurora. Again, the aurora is this flow of electrons from outer space to the Earth. The aurora is caused by this flow of electrons, the electrojet. They wanted to create a virtual antenna tens of thousands of miles long, because with radio broadcast, the antenna has to be longer than the wave being propagated. The shorter the frequency, the longer the wave. And they want to talk, the longer the wave, the deeper into the sea it penetrates. So if you want to talk to a submarine that's 2 miles down, you've got to have a wave that's 10,000 miles long. Well, it's really hard to get an antenna 10,000 miles long. They tried it. It didn't work. It was called Project Sanguine. The head of it was a guy named Christodoulou, who was sort of a latter-day Tesla, and I'll get to him here, I hope. Christodoulou had this bright idea that if you had an antenna 27,000 miles long, you could broadcast at about 3 hertz, and you could talk to submarines anywhere and everywhere in the world. So he came up with this bright idea of let's bury an antenna 27,000 miles long in Wisconsin. We'll just lace Wisconsin up like a pair of tennis shoes. Well, the people in Wisconsin thought, yeah, you're high. So he tried to take it to Are we working, Ted? Yeah, it sounds like it. Okay, one day I sat down and I made up a list of all the potential applications, civilian and military. And I found about 20 potential civilian and about 40 potential military. And this is just a few of them. I'll let you read them here as I babble. One of the things, the first thing that came up, the first thing that was in the literature, was that if you the way the long range radio happens because it bounces off the ionosphere. If you've ever been driving at night and you picked up an FM or an AM radio station from the other side of the continent, it's because it bounced off the ionosphere. Short wave. Long wave is bounced off the ionosphere. This is very important to military communications. And if you can change the shape of the ionosphere, you change the way it bounces, which means you can, if you know what you're doing, you can take out enemy radio communications. Also, if you know what you're doing, you can create artificial bounce spots. And the artificial bounce spots will then allow you to keep your channels open while their channels are closed. Hello. There we go. Okay. That's another page of some of the military things. There was just an amazing number of things. A number of writers have looked at this and come up with things. One of the reasons it was funded was this earth-penetrating tomography. Earth-penetrating tomography is a brand new science. It did not exist before 1980. It is it's like CAT scanning the Earth. It's like taking a dirt radar is one of the things it's been called. It can be used for an awful lot of applications. If you have an earthquake and you want to find out if a bridge has been damaged by the earthquake, this technology will allow you to see the inside of the bridge and see if there's any damage. Also, if you're looking for oil or gold or lost civilizations, they used this to find Sheba, where the Queen of Sheba lived. They used earth-penetrating tomography to find where the city of Sheba was. It's got a lot of good potential. It also has a lot of military potential. As the project was originally funded as under counter-proliferation studies by the Reagan administration to target, to locate, monitor enemy underground bases for the manufacture and launch of weapons of mass destruction. I believe, if I can get this thing to come back. Okay. We talked about Nikola Tesla yesterday. David, I came in just as David was finishing up on Tesla, so I'm not quite sure what he said. Is there anybody here who doesn't know who Tesla is at this point? Everybody knows Tesla. You know, the time I gave this speech, I put up that picture, and I said, is there anybody here who doesn't know who it is? Nobody put up their hands. So you all know who it is? No hands went up. Later, I discovered not one person in the room had a clue who the hell this was, and they were all too embarrassed to mention it. Good. I'm going to assume you know, and I'm going to go on, and if you don't know, you're in a deep, 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 deep. You got to love that attitude. I mean, this guy was, he was the greatest genius of his generation, possibly of his century, and he knew it.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. This is Nick's book. I got the Nick's book is good for information, but not a very good read. And I don't say that with any sort of animosity. It's just Nick is not a writer. He's a school teacher, and it's a home job. It's a self-published book, and it has everything you could possibly have wrong with a self-published book. Okay. On 23 March 1983, President Ronald Reagan called upon the scientific community in our country, those who gave us nuclear weapons, to turn their great talents now to the cause of mankind and world peace, to give us a means of rendering those nuclear weapons impotent and obsolete. That's Star Wars. That's the Strategic Defense Initiative. And it's pretty clear from what they're looking at with HAARP that it is indeed a Star Wars weapons system, and perhaps more. My next book is going to go a great deal of depth into geophysical weaponry. And the key to geophysical warfare is the identification of environmental instabilities to which the addition of a small amount of energy would release vastly greater amounts of energy. A good example of that would be, let us say you have a bomb and you put it on a fault line and you set off an earthquake. Your little bomb knocks down 5 cities. That's geophysical warfare. HAARP appears to have the ability to do geophysical warfare, and that it is a geophysical device. It works with Earth systems, and it's working with Earth systems for Department of Defense purposes. And the Department of Defense is not interested in selling cans of tuna. I mentioned Air Force 2025. Let me see. Let me skip in my notes here because I've got the.
Is that still online?
Yes, it is. I put this slide up because I love this logo. You see the wings and the propeller and 2025 in the Earth. I should be following along in my own notes, don't you think? The reason I mentioned, let me go back to Tesla here while I'm trying to figure out what the heck I was doing. Tesla, as you know, was involved in an awful lot of stuff. And there's Nick Begich's book that I showed you the cover of. The reading title is Advances in Tesla Technology. Nick was convinced that this was Tesla technology. Bernard Eastlund in his patent references Tesla. It turns out that when Eastlund went to file the patents, he gives them to the patent examiner. The patent examiner looks them over and goes, you know, this sounds just like Tesla. And Eastlund goes, who? And the patent examiner would not accept them until he'd put Tesla in. So he had to take it back and write a section of Tesla under the title, I believe, of earlier arts or prior arts, and insert that into it. It is Tesla and it's not Tesla. As these lights, that's Tesla. In fact, Tesla had his laboratory lit with 16 different types of lighting before Edison invented the light bulb. Edison did not invent the light bulb. He was on the golf course at the time. He did give somebody, they didn't record his name, but they did give somebody $5 for inventing the electric light bulb. It's recorded in the lab in the Edison lab notebook that on a particular day $5 was paid out for the discovery. Where are we at? Hello. There we go. Air Force 2025. Nope. Okay. Where were we? There we go. I just blew past it. I hate being disorganized in public. The Air University was directed by the Secretary of the Air Force to come up with what it would take for the United States to be the dominant air and space power in the year 2025, and they produced about 41 papers, position papers on this, and one of those position papers is Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025, in which they talk at great length about the sorts of technologies that they could be moving forward with. And this is a matrix of of what you could do if you owned the weather. You could, if you make it rain over the enemy, he's going to decrease the comfort level. The soldiers are all in wet socks and, the gloomy skies, so the morale is down. If you can may be able to destroy the space assets by creating space weather, these clouds of relativistic particles. On the other hand, you could create fog and cloud generation. If you could make clouds, you could move your guys secretly, as I mentioned earlier. So there's quite a number of things here. And there is an international treaty banning the use of geophysical weapons. And this paper directly addresses what they can do within the framework of that. They also address the fact, well, even though there's a treaty against it, and even though we are the good guys and we wouldn't break the treaty, the bad guys would. So we have to develop the technologies that are against the treaty so that we know what the bad guys are doing. So when the bad guys develop the bad guy stuff, we have the technology to counter the bad guy stuff. The devil made me do it. And speaking of the devil, and here is the devil incarnate. I don't know if you can really make this out very well. This actually is from the mind control section of this. This is Dr. Jose Delgado, and I know there are several people in the room who are very familiar with the work of Dr. Delgado. Delgado told Congress in 1974. He testified before Congress saying, "We need a program of psychosurgery for political control of our society. The purpose is physical control of the mind. Everyone who deviates from the given norm can be surgically mutilated. The individual may think that the most important reality is his own existence, but this is only his personal point of view. This lacks historical perspective. Man does not have the right to develop his own mind. We must electronically control the brain. Someday, armies and generals will be controlled by electronic stimulation of the brain." And that's what Dr. Delgado was working on, ESB, electronic stimulation of the brain. And that's the quote I just read you. One of the reasons I bring this up is that there are a couple of big areas where HAARP has been looked at. One is weather warfare. Nick Begich and I both covered it at length in our books. Nick touches on mind control, and I went quite deep into it, giving you the history of mind control and where we were up to the end of the 20th century. There are a couple of ways that HAARP could be used for mind control, in that those radio waves that it sends out to the top of the atmosphere, those radio waves break down the top of the atmosphere and force it to give off a scream of ELF, extremely low frequency, which comes back into the Earth and can be used for Earth-penetrating tomography. I kind of spaced out when I was talking about that. This is one of the ways that they plan to use this technology. Another way was remember, everything vibrates. Everything is in harmony and in frequency. We're all doing frequencies. One of the ways that Earth-penetrating tomography works is you send a signal into the Earth at a particular frequency. In much the same way that an opera singer can break a crystal goblet by singing the right frequency to shatter the crystal, if you can send a signal into an object, and if you get the right signal, the object will vibrate with it, will harmonize with it, and will send back a signal. And you can tune the Earth like a tuning fork. You can get these various strata, various objects underground to make different noises. And if you know what the noises are, you can then find out what it is you're getting to sing for you. The other aspect is communicating with deeply submerged submarines. Is they want to turn the electrojet into a virtual antenna tens of thousands of miles long to generate ELF, extremely low frequency waves that penetrate deep into the sea. Now the thing is this ELF, whether being used for Earth-penetrating tomography or talking to submarines, this ELF is at the same frequency that the human brain works at. And when I read that, I went, oh dear, because there is there's over 130 years of guys trying to win the hearts and minds of the enemy by literally taking the minds of the enemy. And so I looked at how could HAARP do that, and one of the things that struck me is in researching hypnosis, researching the hypnosis aspect of mind control. We know that they were working on sleeper agents. You may have seen the movie Telephone with Charles Bronson, in which Bronson is activated. He's a sleeper agent. He has no idea that he is. He gets a telephone call and goes off and, I believe, assassinates people or whatever. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. So imagine, if you will, you plan to take over country X, and you spend 20 years setting up your sleepers. And the way you do it is you send in dentists who are also hypnotic mind control specialists. And everybody who comes into the dentist's office, he doesn't get twilight sleep, he gets hypnotized. And as well as getting his teeth extracted, he gets a command phrase put in, and he gets given his orders. And you bring him back every 6 months or every 4 months for a free dental checkup and cleaning to reinstall the commands. Well, now you've got 100,000, 1 million people who have received their commands, who have received their marching orders. So how do you launch them? If you're ready to take over the country, you got your army in place, total fifth column are just going to do your commands, but you got to launch them all at the same time. Well, there's a lot of talk that HAARP may be able to put words into people's heads. If you can put words, if I could put one word in everybody's head, you know, and each one of you have your own command phrases, your own missions, and I know the phrase is Alice is wearing a blue dress. I say that, and you all get up and you go out and you start, putting LSD in water supplies and blowing up train trestles and whatnot. So I looked at HAARP as a way. HAARP could be used as a way to fire sleeper agents. Kathy's shaking her head. Yeah. My book is HAARP, the Ultimate Weapon of the Conspiracy. So I probably ought to talk a little bit about the conspiracy. In school, we were taught that this phrase means a new order for the ages. Novus new, ordo order, seclorum, the secular world. To me, that sounds like New World Order. Now, what the real difference between Nick Begich's book and mine is that Nick is an old 60s hippie liberal, and he had that mindset of civilian good, military bad. He establishes conclusively that HAARP is a military project and goes, okay, that's it, I'm done. I've done my work here. It's military, it's bad, that's all there is to it. And I think, the military is just a tool. The military is just a machine. It's like a bulldozer. Bulldozer doesn't decide what pile of dirt to push up. The guy driving the bulldozer, and he doesn't, the guy who's cutting his checks tells him which pile of dirt to push. So you got to ask, who's driving the military? Who's cutting the checks? Whose agendas is this technology going to further? And in the book, I look at half a dozen different agendas. And what I see going on in the world right now is there is a very concerted effort to create a single one world government. And this very concerted effort to create a single one world government is in the moment involved in inter-scene fighting. And the reason we don't have Big Brother is because there are 2 competing sets of Big Brothers, or maybe 8 competing sets of Big Brothers, and every time one side manages to get a piece of it nailed down, the other side pries it up, because no, we don't like that version, we want our version. And so we're stumbling and jogging towards a new world order. And the major factions I see are the Rockefeller, Rothschild, old line banksters who are trying to create a world government based on the corporations that would, it looks like David Rockefeller wants to be chairman of the board of Earth. On the other hand, you have communism is not dead. It's just not red anymore. Now it's green. The communist movement has taken over the environmental movement, And they're trying to create a world government based on environmental edicts. So on the one hand, you have NAFTA and GATT, and the other hand, you have Agenda 21 and the Kyoto Accords. And I touched a bit of that in the book, and I'm going to go a great deal deeper into it in the next book. Have I completely confused you now? Let me open this to some questions. But you're there in the back.
Yeah, you made a comment earlier that you went on to the next thing. I'm really curious about when you commented that that's how there's only one HAARP, right? That we know of?
Right. One of the problems.
There's a Russian one, too.
Well, okay. HAARP is
That's part of my question.
okay. HAARP is an ionospheric heater. There are about 20 of them in use around the planet. There's one at Arecibo. There's like 6 in the Soviet Union. However, HAARP is the only one that can focus the energy from the field. All the others just send out a lot of radio and hope it does something.
Okay, here's my question. You made a comment about that's how they brought the Columbia shuttle down.
Right.
Who brought the Columbia shuttle?
HAARP was up and running for 60 minutes before re-entry. Continued running for about another 60 minutes after signal loss.
Are you saying this was an accident?
I don't know. I didn't do this research. There is a website called Columbia's Sacrifice. It should have an apostrophe in it, but it doesn't. So it's Columbia's Sacrifice. I think it's .com. The guy who did that, John Hicks. He is a structural engineer, and he works for a company where for the last 26 years, all he's done is when things break, he figures out why they broke. So when Columbia broke, he said, well, I got to figure this one out. And he did a really amazing, in-depth, very scientific, very, very mainstream, very straight-laced analysis of it. And he concluded that the official NASA investigation was bogus, that they had faked evidence, they had altered evidence, that they had generated a false answer, and that the official answer of this burn through would have produced a cascade effect. But the evidence, the real evidence, is that it was a simultaneous, complete, catastrophic collapse of the electronics, which indicated something like an EMP. And then he got from Marshall Smith, who I mentioned at Bro John, that HAARP was up and running in the mode from this earlier Bernard Eastland patent for generating EMPs at altitude.
So his allegation is that by accident or on
Or,
purpose.
but one of the, being charitable, I'd like to say it was an accident that they simply didn't know. However, the odd thing is that there is the flight data recorder. The flight data recorder was removed the last time Columbia was serviced and not reinstalled. But it was found in the debris field 3 days after the event, and the flight data recorder does not, the data that's on the flight data recorder does not match the official NASA analysis of it, and it was found virtually undamaged with the entire wiring harness intact.
Yeah, I would like to comment too. I mean, that's pretty interesting. And along those lines, if you believe, I think with the Area 51 type stories and all that, they're trying, I mean, it kind of makes sense that they actually don't want the space shuttle program to be successful and stuff, because they already have an alternative program already, and the space shuttle one, they want it to sort of keep failing. It's on, because supposedly our space program is way, way behind. We can't even go to the moon anymore, like we could, 40 years ago, we could go to the moon. But not now.
Yeah.
And our space program is getting worse, not better.
Yeah.
And part of it is these disasters and things
Well,
like that.
NASA is getting
But that was also what Bernard Eastland said in that movie was, he said, yeah, they never talk about the pulsing capacity, which
Exactly.
would make the electromagnetic pulse, and they
Right.
ignore that capability.
Right, that's a very good point, and this is a technical point that I only sort of understand, but when you pulse something, you can jack the energy of it up. I know Kathy understands this. Bernard Eastland gives a really... Bernard Eastland gives a really good example of how to understand pulsing. You take a little pen light. I don't have one on me. You got a little pen light flashlight. You put a little battery in that, and that battery can give you a little bit of light for hundreds of hours. Or you put it in a flash camera, and that little battery can give you a blinding flash of light for an instant. And that's what pulsing is. And that all the official HAARP literature never mentions anywhere being able to pulse the field. Now, they're talking about 3.6 billion watts in normal mode. And Bernard Eastland ran up the numbers, and he said in order to be able to affect weather on a continent-wide scale, you have to be able to get at least 100 billion watts. They're making 3.6, you got to get at least 100. But you can get 100 times by pulsing it. So they could achieve the numbers he thinks they would have to achieve by pulsing. And of course, they don't admit to it.
But Jerry, please.
Kathy, let's grab some other questions. Let's have some other people. Well, this isn't her conference, and she's not the speaker.
No, but I can challenge him, and I'm going to.
That's fine. I mean, you know what? He's going to be here all day.
Yeah.
Talk to
You
him.
don't want me to
Yeah,
challenge
other
him in
people
front
might
of
have
other
questions.
people, is that it? You don't want to challenge in front of other people?
Go ahead and ask your question.
Go ahead.
All right, first of all, Jerry, you have to have, if you're going to talk about the Columbia being brought down by EMP, and the fact that HAARP is capable of doing that, you have to have a pinpoint pulse at that particular
No. That's the beauty of the earlier Bernard Patton Eastland, which I have a link to from my website. You can find it. What he proposed was you create this plasma at about 200, according to the patent, you create this plasma at about 250 miles up. Because of convection, it goes out to about 1,500 miles and then spreads. It's caught between the magnetic lines of force and stays up there, spreading in an ever attenuating but growing field, so that anything that passes through this will get fried. And so the suggestion is, and I'm not saying that that's what happened. I've also read that there was a solar flare about 3 days earlier that reached the Earth at about the same time that the shuttle did its re-entry, and so it could have been a solar flare that mimicked an EMP. I'm just saying that this is a technology that is patented, that they're working on, and there seems to be a relationship here.
How long does that plasma thing last?
I don't know. And even if I did know, I wouldn't remember it.
Could I sort of make a comment about alternative technologies that could help us deal with HAARP?
You know, I asked you guys to remind me spiritual, and not one of you said anything. Now you just reminded me of it. Yes, please.
Okay. Well, there are ways to reestablish our consciousness if we're bombarded by, these energies that send signals into. These are external, manipulations. But there's old, ancient technology that allows us to reestablish our consciousness. We can create our own vibration that will bring us back to center. Through ancient techniques of meditation. We all have, being raised in this world, we all have picked up emotional blocks from traumatic experiences, and we can clear those. There are many ways to do that, and that helps us stay in center. We can, by being careful about what we take into our bodies, it just helps us stay clear and helps us be a counterforce to all of this. And also in shamanism, there are ancient techniques for helping the weather to reestablish itself. And I know Colorado was suffering from a terrible drought, and there were people, who had studied shamanism who we were all trying to reestablish the natural cycle, and we did. It's raining, it's snowing, things are much more balanced now. And so everything you're saying is wonderful and beautiful, and we need to be aware of it. And I think we also need to not lose hope, because there are ways that we can counter these things.
Good point. I meant to, in the book, I wanted to go into some spiritual aspects of it, and I didn't because I ran out of pages, and I realized that it was just a little too woo-woo for me, so I kind of backed off on it. But let me throw out some ideas here. One of the things is, if we have this protective field, this Star Wars radiation field that will kill incoming things, what's it really intended to kill? Is it ICBMs? Is it enemy spy satellites? Is it Paul Benowitz's spaceships? Is it angelic beings or demons? I mean, everything vibrates. Everything is running on frequencies. You get the right frequency, you can shatter a crystal. You get the right frequency, you can shatter a virus. This gizmo could create a shield that there's known to be healthful frequencies. You know, the magic healing crystal may indeed be a magic healing crystal. That its frequencies may make you feel better. Or you can, you know, the Atlantean crystals may be more than just sending power around, but sending positive life energy around, sending healthful zones. Christopher Dunn suggested that the Great Pyramid may be emitting a signal to make you feel good, make you in higher consciousness. HAARP is designed to bathe the entire world in radio frequencies. And I'm wondering what radio frequencies what secret agendas there may be behind this. I mean, they could be using it to cure us all, or they could be using it to kill us all.
So how do we individually protect ourselves? You said there was a gizmo or a...
Oh, well, I was being HAARP as the gizmo, but you know, I get asked, how do you protect yourself all the time? And I don't know any good Western science that I don't know anything that Bill Nye, the science guy, would agree with.
We all wear aluminum foil hats.
No, no, it won't do it. No. Yeah.
Can we all get together?
In terms of science, if you're dealing with radio, so you have to shield yourself from the radio. If you own a microwave oven, you know that when you try to look in it, you got to look through this little screen of dots. Well, the whole microwave oven is a box of that. That's called a Faraday cage. That grill work goes all the way around the whole thing, and it prevents the microwaves in the box from getting out. Now, if you want to defend yourself by modern science against HAARP, you have to put yourself in the box. And yeah, you have to build a microwave that's the size of your house and live in it. But I don't know anybody who wants to do that. Well, actually, I know one person who wants to do that.
Actually, if I could just mention, just on that, there is a company called EMF Shielding or EMF, I forgot their website, but if somebody looks on the internet, there's a company that has all sorts of shielding and Faraday, copper, grounded things that you can put in your house.
Yeah, there's one of the products that they have is a screen you can put on your windows, so that if you happen to be looking out your window at a cell tower, you put the screen on it, and the cell tower energies don't get into your house. He keeps putting his hand up. Will you say something?
Yeah, you're saying vibrations and frequencies. You know if this thing can affect anything on a subatomic level? Because theoretical physics right now, there's a theory, well, more philosophy than theory, about string theory.
Right.
Where everything vibrates, everything that vibrates at a different frequency, that vibration kind of dictates what the molecule will be. You know if it'll affect anything? That's theoretical physics, and I'm poli-sci.
Your website?
My website. I wonder if it was in this. Did we have it? Hello. Why does it go away? We're back to the beginning.
JerryESmith.com.
Yeah. I thought I had the.
No, your own website.
I thought I had the front page. Yeah, there we go. That's the front page of my website as it was a few months ago. And it is JerryESmith.com.
All right, one more question then?
I have a real quick question. I come from Guam. It's a military strategic air base. And I saw people one time doing strange things with the trees. They were taking the trees apart and then left them looking like tuning forks. Just a bit like this. And there were hundreds of them. And I thought it was really strange. I mean, they were like pretending to farm the land, but if you watch them closely, they were just doing really strange stuff. Like just plowing in the same area, not really doing anything, just digging, and then all kinds of strange things, putting aluminum foil,
I've
seashell.
not heard of this
Yeah.
one.
But it was
No
the way
clue.
the trees all look like,
He doesn't have an answer for that.
All right, thanks. Let's have a hand for Jerry.